I'm Sean Fennessey.
And I'm Amanda Dobbins.
And this is The Big Picture, a conversation show about the 91st Academy Awards. Amanda, here we are in the day of our Green Book, winner of the Best Picture.
You had a feeling.
I had a feeling. A lot of people had a feeling clearly in the Academy that Green Book, the story of Tony Lip and Don Shirley, two men who befriended one another in the 1960s and drove through the American South, is now the Best Picture. And I was shocked by the outcome. Were you shocked?
Yes. I think I was a little less shocked because you late last week were like, there's a feeling in the air. And I think we both thought this is going to go, quote, wrong. You and I both picked Roma on our ballots.
We did.
That was the favorite going in. And we both felt like we had gone wrong with our ballots by the end of last week. I thought it was going to be Bohemian Rhapsody, and you thought it was going to be Green Book. And here you are.
Well, I wouldn't say I feel good about being right. I mean, the only reason that happened is because I had a chance to talk to a handful of people who either work in the movie business and one person who was a voter, and they all said it's going to be Green Book. They didn't say they were voting for Green Book or even encouraging anyone to vote for Green Book, but that they could just feel it happening. The last time you and I had a instant pod like this, it was immediately after the Golden Globes, where Green Book won. Yeah. And maybe we should have known something when that happened. I think that there's so much to unpack here about what this win means. There is clearly a core theme that we're going to investigate here, because this is a night in which Black Panther won 3 Oscars, in which Spike Lee won his first Oscar, but also Bohemian Rhapsody won 4 Oscars, and Green Book won 3 Oscars, including Original Screenplay and Best Picture. And I feel like we see an Academy that is split in half. There is an old Academy and a new Academy, and all the work that's been happening over the last 5 years is manifesting itself in certain wins, and all the work that's been done in the previous 90 years is also manifesting. And it's an extraordinary thing to see happen in real time.
I agree. And that has been, in many ways, the theme of this season, has just been the tension between the old Academy and old Hollywood, and the new Academy and the new Hollywood, and the way we watch movies and the types of movies that we watch and take seriously. And, Netflix had a candidate up for Best Picture tonight, and it didn't win.
It didn't.
And I think there was a lot of resistance throughout the year throughout the season to this idea of Netflix winning an Oscar. And there were a lot of people who were against that and didn't want to see that happen for a lot of different reasons, possibly including their own business interests, but whatever, it's an industry. And then there were a lot of people who I think aligned themselves with Green Book because of the conversation around Green Book. There were a lot of people who were pretty vocal about the fact that they didn't appreciate people complaining or asking questions about the way that Green Book was written or told, or the concerns of Don Shirley's family. They didn't like being told what to do. They are people who are successful in Hollywood, and they decided that they can do what they want. And I think that that's another theme that has kind of been through this season of, how dare you guys talk to us? How dare you question our power? We have been successful in Hollywood for a long time, and we're going to vote accordingly.
They voted how they felt, I suppose. It was interesting the way that the movie was positioned throughout the night, because early in the night, we saw consecutive Black Panther wins in the Best Costume category and in the Best Production Design category, 2 African-American women winning. It was the first time even one had won in more than 35 years in a non-acting category. And then slowly but surely, I felt like the show was going very smoothly. The no-host thing seemed to be not much of an issue. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. There was this kind of ease of use. It was one of the most calm and well-oiled Oscars telecasts that I can recall in a long time.
Great first hour, much like A Star is Born.
Much like A Star is Born. And then this sort of ended the way that A Star is Born ends, candidly, with the brutal death of Netflix's Best Picture chances, along with BlacKkKlansman and Black Panther and a number of other films.
And Bradley Cooper's Oscar chances.
And Bradley Cooper's.
And also ran from the very beginning.
We have so much to say about Bradley Cooper and A Star is Born. And a very special performance of Shallow. But the Green Book thing is fascinating. And my immediate reaction was, they've done it again. They've just picked another movie that in 5 years we're going to be like, that movie won Best Picture? Seriously? And I don't hate Green Book. I certainly see its flaws, and I have complicated feelings about the revelations around Don Shirley's family and how they've discussed the movie. And rewatching it, I can certainly see from new perspectives what's problematic about the movie. But there are things to recommend about it. Mahershala Ali obviously won for Best Supporting Actor. He's wonderful in the movie. But man, this is just so clearly a mistake. And I'm more gobsmacked than I should be, I guess.
Well, I think I am kind of used to the Academy making mistakes in Best Picture. I mean, this is part of the fun of watching the Oscars and like bitching about the Oscars, is that we whine and we say, oh, look at everything that was overlooked. There's like a tradition of Best Picture getting it wrong, right? So I don't know that I would almost be weirded out if suddenly Best Picture were getting it right all of the time. I would start questioning my own senses and being like, wait, has my taste in film changed? But I think what is shocking or a little uncomfortable making about this particular win is just I keep going back to this idea of just the resistance to change and the resistance of feedback and the resistance of all of the people who won in the first hour of the show that we were so excited about. And there is a group within Hollywood who does not seem excited about that. Mm-hmm. And I can't separate that from the Green Book victory. So to me, it's more about what this particular not quite worthy film represents in terms of what we want Hollywood and the film industry to be going forward.
So I'm going to share with you a comparison that someone made recently that is the most obvious and unfortunate comparison, but then in a lot of ways, people feel like this reflects the white lash of the Donald Trump election.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably putting too fine a point on it, but there is definitely this feeling that there are a lot of older voters who like this movie, and not just white voters. I mean, John Lewis presented this film during the ceremony, and it's really complicated. It's really complicated to know. I mean, we're 30 years exactly since Driving Miss Daisy won, and the conversation around this sort of thing was roiling back then. Mm-hmm. And it's fitting that Spike Lee won tonight, but did not win Best Director and did not win Best Picture for BlacKkKlansman. I don't know what this means. Do you think that this is just sort of like we have to wait out a 10-year generation of people moving out of the Academy before it becomes something different, or is this maybe just a confluence of events because of the sort of the specific representative ideas in each nominee tonight?
I think it's just we're kind of in that seesaw of change, right? And you saw that even within the telecast tonight, where like the first hour you're like, this is great. 2 wins for Black Panther. Regina King won. We're feeling great. And then Bohemian Rhapsody won several awards in the technical categories. And it seesawed back and forth between, I think, what you and I and a certain type of viewer sees as the development of the Academy, and then the choices and weird mistakes and awards maybe that we wouldn't have picked ourselves that we are used to from the Academy Awards. And that to me just seems a little bit that there are maybe 2 academies or like 15 different types of academies. It really is an organization in flux. They've added a lot of new members. They are trying to update it. And I think you also got to keep in mind that the industry is very much in change. How we see movies is very much in change. And so every voter is going to respond to that differently. And I think everyone is seeing a future of Hollywood that's like slightly different, and none of it really makes sense yet. So I think maybe in 10 years, the change will just have happened a bit more, if that makes any sense. That it won't be as, this is also confusing just because nobody knows what to do. And that's true of Hollywood at large, and that seems like it was certainly true of the ballots.
Yeah, it's the other thing that's interesting to me about this is, aside from the obvious sociological issues around the movie and what people are sort of vexed about, I just thought that all of the big Green Book wins were just kind of bad TV. Mm-hmm. I thought Mahershala Ali, who is obviously a wonderful actor, gave a speech that he has more or less been giving for the last 3 months. It wasn't good television. When Peter Farrelly and Nick Vallelonga received Best Original Screenplay, there was almost this feeling of like, don't say the wrong thing, emanating not just from the audience, but also from the people receiving awards, that there was like a particularly close watch on what was said. And so you didn't get this exultation. You didn't get this extraordinary feeling of excitement that you got, say, when Olivia Colman won, mm-hmm. or even Rami Malek won, mm-hmm. who was clearly very moved and excited about that. I'm sure it was a lifelong dream of his to win, mm-hmm. Because of what Nick Vallelonga went through with tweets that were exposed and all of the revelations about the writing of this screenplay. I could almost feel a tenseness mm-hmm. in him not to say anything other than like, I just want everybody to love each other. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of blank. And then, a secret of the Oscars is that the Best Picture acceptance speech is often pretty bad.
Yes,
because it's often given by producers. And this year was no exception. And there have just been a lot of mediocre Peter Farrelly acceptance speeches.
Yeah, I was going to say, who didn't seem tense? Peter Farrelly.
No.
You know who seemed right at home? Who just walked right on stage and was like, give me the Oscar? Peter Farrelly.
He seemed at home. I wouldn't say he was very interesting, though.
No.
And that's bad for the show. You know, I mean, the show was relatively crisp by its standards. I think it was probably no more than 3 hours and 20 minutes. People probably stuck around for this, more than likely. It got in under 3.5 hours, and this is what they were rewarded with. And, you know, I guess that's fine if you're a fan of Green Book. And it's okay even if you're not a fan of Green Book, but a show that was sort of just generally lacking pizzazz, ending on such a down note, it's such sort of like a scratching your chin emoji, ultimately. Like, that was the feeling I had at the end of the show.
You and Julia Roberts, who ended the broadcast being like, well, apparently that's the end. She looked great and also very on point.
She should have hosted.
Well, no one should have hosted. We'll talk about that.
Okay, that's fair.
That was fine. But she was great. And I think that we should go back and examine her reading the words Green Book, because I think it was a real, I don't want to be the person saying this kind of moment.
I don't know. She had that 1,000-watt smile.
Sure, but, you know, her smile has many tones, and I know that tone. That tone was like, why is it me?
That's true. Did you notice that they didn't thank Don Shirley in their final acceptance speech?
Yeah.
That was unfortunate.
Yeah.
Perhaps representative, perhaps metaphorical for this entire venture.
Yeah.
You know, I thought even before this award we were going to talk about the idea of the two academies just because of the other wins that happened. The Green Book original screenplay probably should have been more of a sign to us that this is where we were going. Oftentimes, the Best Picture winner picks up a screenplay win. For whatever reason, it just wasn't dawning on me. I kept thinking about Bohemian Rhapsody because you kind of talked me into it over the last couple of days. We never quite got there, which I was relieved about. Let's go all the way to the front of the show, though. I felt like the Queen performance that opened the show was neither the old Academy nor the new Academy. It was just sort of like a concert you'd see at Jones Beach, like with your mom. Like, it was just not, that was not the Oscars. And it wasn't bad. It was just sort of confusing.
I have made my feelings known on song performances during the Oscars, and we will revisit it because, you know, I have some scores to settle. I didn't care for it. There was like a huge amount of Queen, both in the show and in the commercials, and which just seemed to me everyone was latching on to the only movie that made any money, except for Black Panther, which made more money, but, you know, that's fine.
That's true.
But it was in the commercials. It was everywhere. People just kind of wanted to be a part of the Bohemian Rhapsody experience.
There were just as many superfluous cutaways to Brian May in this show as there were in Bohemian Rhapsody. All of the times you kept seeing Brian May in the frame, you're like, why am I looking at Brian May instead of Freddie Mercury? What did you think generally about Bohemian Rhapsody sort of overwhelming certain aspects of the telecast?
You know, it just seemed to me like a ratings. We need people to want to watch the show. We need people to care. And obviously that is a movie that, putting its quality aside, which I think we can now for the most part, thankfully. Like, we don't have to talk about Bohemian Rhapsody as some great piece of cinema anymore.
No.
Small
Did
blessings.
we ever do that?
Well, you and I didn't,
okay.
But I think many people wanted to. But it is a movie that a lot of people enjoyed. It certainly made a lot of money, and you got to get viewers somehow. So
I think it's okay for flawed movies to be nominated for awards. That's going to happen forever. I think I would have felt a lot differently if it went like 0 for 7 or whatever, however many Oscars it was nominated for, and then we just said, oh, that was like kind of a curio. It did win Best Actor, which is, of course, one of the signature awards, and we're going to remember that forever, sort of, as one of these, like, how did this happen? The one it reminded me of, and this may be a little bit uncharitable towards Rami Malek, but I thought a bit of Adrian Brody winning for The Pianist, which was also made by a controversial filmmaker with a sordid past, and it's a movie that I wouldn't say was beloved, but there was a sort of a strong feeling within the Academy for, and Adrian Brody hasn't really done anything as notable since. And I worry almost for that curse for Rami Malek, because I'm a fan of Rami Malek's, but even in this movie, many people pointed out on Twitter tonight that the clip they used to show us was him lip syncing.
Yes, remember when I was like, he didn't sing, he shouldn't win an Oscar for 5 months, and you mocked me?
Well,
it's fine.
You know, I have heard, and this is impossible to verify, but the makers of the film have said that they synced his vocals with Freddie's vocals in various stages.
They can also sync my vocals with it, and, you know, would sound the same.
I don't think we want that.
Okay, you don't know. You haven't heard me sing.
Do you want to do a little Queen?
No, I don't.
What would be your Queen of song of choice right now? You're my best friend, maybe?
No. I think this vote, that was for Freddie Mercury. People really, really liked listening to Queen songs loud, and he was obviously the most electric part of that movie. So I think that we will not be proud of it in 5 years, but also, you know, whatever.
How do you think Ethan Hawke spent his Sunday night?
That's a great question. I assume he was in Brooklyn walking around, maybe getting some ice cream.
Did they do Sunday night showings of True West? Because I think he's performing True West right now
no,
on
it
Broadway.
would have been, I think, a matinee, and then maybe he has, I don't know, actually. But
maybe he just hit the CBD oil, taking a nap.
Yeah.
Okay, shout out to Ethan Hawke. I wish you were nominated. It's probably time to talk about Olivia Colman. This was probably the most fun win of the night.
Yes.
I would say bar none, the most fun win of the night.
Oh, absolutely.
She, of course, won Best Actress for The Favorite, defeating the star of The Wife, a movie that we really went out of our way to watch.
Yeah, we did. We saw The Wife.
We saw The Wife, and we did an entire podcast about The Wife, and no one in the Academy saw The Wife because no one voted for Glenn Close, who has now been nominated 7 times and never won. And I'm going to let you speak for as long as you like about how delighted you were for Olivia Colman.
Yeah.
I would just like to say, we made such fun of The Wife for months and months, and it was no disrespect to Glenn Close, but I feel very bad for Glenn Close.
Please put it on the record. I felt terrible. And part of this being an exciting moment in the telecast was it was the only real total shocker.
It was.
No one saw this coming at all. And I think we gasped and were silent. And then you kind of got carried away on the tide of Olivia Colman's speech, which we'll talk more about. But man, I do feel bad for Glenn Close.
Here's the thing. When you're nominated for an Oscar, you have to do so much work that you don't get paid for. You just go to every party. You kiss every baby. You go to every award show. And she won at most of those award shows. Not everyone, but most of them. And to come up with nothing and to be 65 years old and clearly one of the greatest actresses of your generation and a completely laureled screen actress, and then just have to go home with your Independent Spirit Award, that sucks. That sucks.
So they showed the reactions of the nominees on the telecast as the name was announced, and they don't always do that, but the screenshots of the Best Actress reactions are going around on Twitter, and I really recommend seeking that out. I thought Glenn Close handled it really graciously and well throughout the entire night.
As always, she's the wife.
She's also a trained performer and is, used to being in public and keeping it together. But she's kind of doing that, the emoji of the diagonal face, just and that's the exact moment. And it's just, and everyone else, Melissa McCarthy looks totally stunned. Olivia Colman obviously looks stunned. I think Lady Gaga is even Lady Gaga is not.
That's her resting face, in fairness.
No, but it's not like I am emotional or whatever. She just looked like a normal surprised human. So it was really, it was great TV and also extremely surprising.
So you and I were watching the show together, and when Olivia Colman started striding to the stage, you began to levitate like Ethan Hawke in First Reformed. You want to recount your emotions?
I found it really moving. Actually, I did tear up because she was obviously emotional and moved by it, and she's very funny, but she was doing comedy and also just really emitting love in a way that I found very charming. So, and I just like her a lot. It was so happy. I was just smiling at the screen. You don't get to do that often. I was also thinking about season 3 of The Crown, which release it tonight. Netflix, I dare you. Come on, make good. You can turn this night around, Netflix. Put The Crown season 3 out right now.
I feel like there's more hell to pay than there is programming to launch tonight at Netflix, unfortunately. That's a fascinating thing. I guess we probably shouldn't go too far. And I don't want to cut off your sentiments about Olivia Colman.
I'm much like Olivia Colman. I don't really have a lot of words to put around it. It's just like a bubbling of gratitude and happiness. She's lovely. I wish her a long career.
It's a wonderful performance. The Favorite went 1 of 10. It was the most nominated film along with Roma, and it only won 1 award. But that was a good award to win. And it was a great speech. And here's the thing. What people want, especially from the Best Actress winner, is someone who seems real and really grateful and excited.
That's sexist, but yes.
I'm telling you, honestly, that's what people want.
I know, it's true. I agree with you.
I'm not saying that's what I want.
I know, but we do have to just point that out, very plainly.
But the long history of Sally Field in that montage of You Like Me, You Really Like Me it is straight out of that playbook.
And Jennifer Lawrence tripping on the stairs.
Completely.
Absolutely.
And sexist or not.
I'm not saying you're sexist, but we need to point out the double standards where we can, Sean.
It is a double standard, but it sort of delivered the one moment, I think, in the show where there was maybe the only other moment was Spike Lee.
Yes.
And before we talk about Roma and Netflix, let's talk about Spike a little bit. I don't know what Spike said for the first minute or so of his acceptance speech because it was bleeped out, which is perfectly Oscars. The idea of censoring Spike Lee is right on the surface there.
I did read on Twitter that one of the things he said was "Don't turn the motherfucking clock on."
Dope.
So
Love it.
yes.
Spike is obviously overdue. And we say overdue all the time about people who were nominated. Glenn Close was overdue. She did not win. Spike did win. Spike will not die Oscarless, which is really cool. I wouldn't say that BlacKkKlansman is in the top 10 of Spike Lee original or adapted screenplays, original screenplays, anything he's written. But it was exciting to see him on stage. It was exciting to see Sam Jackson give him an award. Sam Jackson got his biggest break from Spike Lee. Yeah. And I thought it was a genuinely good moment. I mean, he was weirdly reading from a piece of paper, and that was kind of bad, and there was some numerology there going on.
Right. Well, but it was numerology about, like, the history of America and the history of slavery.
Yes.
And then also his personal history and the women who raised him. So, I get it. I will cut people a lot of slack when they have actually put thought, and they know that it's a big moment, and they want to say something of importance.
Right.
There were some other people tonight who didn't do that, and we can talk about them later. So I'm going to cut him some slack on the paper. I thought it was a magical moment.
It was really great. And I don't know. I find it funny. This seemed to be a night of multiple people winning single awards, but only one person getting to talk. I felt like that happened over and over again, which is, in the case of Spike Lee, you're completely fine with it. But in other cases, my heart kind of goes out to Guy X and Guy Y and Guy Z, who doesn't get to say anything on stage.
Here's what I'm going to say. I respect Guy X and Guy Y and Guy Z, who know that you just got to pick one guy.
That's true.
And you got to have your moment in the sun and share your gratitude and then keep it moving. The worst is when it's for people who have worked very hard and won an Oscar, so no disrespect, but you aren't super familiar with them, and then they're just passing the microphone around and thanking random people. There's not a vision. You need a vision in the speech, even if it's a shared award.
I feel like many months ago, Netflix had a vision for how to become the all-consuming entertainment company in the world.
What a segue.
And they didn't get it. And there has been a lot of reporting about the great lengths and the enormous amount of money they've spent to secure a Best Picture for Roma. Now, we're at the stage since the Oscars are over where we can say that this is not a meritocracy, even a little bit. We just talked about Green Book for 10 minutes, and Green Book winning Best Picture is a farce. It happened, but it's a farce. Roma is, of course, a beautiful film, incredibly well made by Alfonso Cuarón. As the show was happening and the awards were sort of being evenly meted out, I was like, okay, the two Hollywoods, that's definitely the theme. But in the middle, kind of bursting the two, is Roma and Netflix as the sort of like anti-everything, the sort of the Thanos, if you will.
I won't.
Of popular culture.
I won't.
And come to destroy us all. And even though I had heard about Green Book possibly winning and I thought a lot about it, I still just felt like, you know what? The campaigning that Netflix did here, the incredible work of Alfonso Cuarón, the admiration that people have for him in the Academy, the beauty of that story, I think it's going to win. And when it wins, it'll set the agenda for what the future of Hollywood really is. There was a notable commercial in the middle of this show for The Irishman, a new film from Netflix and Martin Scorsese that you pointed out.
In theaters this fall. And also on Netflix, but the in theaters this fall title card came first.
So that felt like the paradigm. That felt like where we are now as a movie-going audience. We can watch a movie on Netflix, and we can also go, if you go to the Vista in Los Angeles today, it is showing Roma. And it didn't happen. Like the storyline didn't happen. It didn't cohere.
Right. The storyline didn't happen, but like that's the reality. It exists.
It is.
Like that is how we will see movies, and Netflix is.
How do you think that they'll respond? Does that mean now that they're going to spend twice as much money to make The Irishman work as Best Picture next year?
Well, it's a good question. Do they have to spend twice as much money on a Martin Scorsese movie?
I don't know.
Or does the fact that it's Martin Scorsese kind of
it depends
buy them a lot?
It depends on what you think is responsible for the Green Book win, and for the Moonlight win, and for the Shape of Water win. Like over the years, we have been conditioned to understand Oscar races as these strategic maneuverings where there are a series of people who are hired who you never see, you never hear about unless you read the trades. And those people are making phone calls all day. They're hosting parties. They're putting they're putting voters in front of nominees. They're making things happen. The last three wins kind of run counter to the idea of the overwhelming campaign. I wouldn't say the Green Book's campaign has been overwhelming. In fact, it's taken more fire than any Best Picture winner I can remember in a long, long time.
Right.
And still it won. The Shape of Water was sort of the opposite. It was like, this is inevitable. Guillermo del Toro is overdue. He's made a lovely film. It's kind of a soft year. Nobody feels comfortable giving it to Get Out or to Dunkirk or to Lady Bird or even to Three Billboards. Let's just give it to something we can all kind of agree on, which is The Shape of Water and Del Toro. And then Moonlight was this incredible paroxysm that nobody saw that coming, and it was this small story, and it was all about the new Academy and all these new members and everything that Cheryl Boone Isaacs had done to introduce a new way of thinking about Best Picture. So all that stuff, all that kind of Harvey Weinstein DNA and all that vicious backdoor dealing doesn't really feel as much a part of this. Now, I probably sound a little naive because there's still a lot of money being spent to do this stuff, but it's notable that the most aggressive campaigning didn't work this year.
That's true, though I think, I don't know. It's like, I do think at some point just people didn't want to vote for a Netflix film, and in the same way that they didn't want to vote for a superhero movie for many years.
Yeah.
And
still don't, maybe.
And still don't. And that will continue until well after Netflix and superhero movies have taken over the world, which, like, by the way, they already have. We're living in it, and eventually they'll probably win something for a movie that is not quite as good as Roma. It's like every other type of Oscar thing. They won't actually win for the thing that is good, and it'll be much later when it's a foregone conclusion.
So Best Picture for Captain Marvel 3 and Best Picture for Roma 5. That's what we're going to get soon. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. You want to talk a little bit more about the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I feel like we need to devote a significant amount of time to the Shallow performance. I have a lot of feelings about it. I think, we watched this show with our spouses.
We did. We should thank them. God bless them.
Thank you to our spouses, who have been wonderful in this journey of chronicling this very weird Oscars.
And they just literally sat next to us while we looked at our phones and computers for 3 hours and 20 minutes. And then they were really nice about it.
They were very supportive. And they were very supportive when you and I were both sort of like silently shrieking during that performance, because I don't think in a way that was either positive nor negative. I was just kind of like, there is an intense awkwardness to everything that is happening here.
I will say, towards the very end, I realized that I was watching with my hands over my face, and I looked at you, and you were also watching with your hands covering part of your face, as we actually couldn't physically stand to devote all of ourselves to the performance, though Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga could stand to devote all of themselves to the performance.
Clearly.
That was a choice. It was many choices, actually.
Somewhere along the way, I feel like you and I became Jackson, Maine, and Allie's mom and dad. We're just like,
we're terrible parents.
We are
really bad.
Way too invested in them and way too embarrassed by them, but also just love them unconditionally.
Well, so you're going with, I support this performance.
Well, okay.
I'm proud of them because it's my kid and they can't embarrass me.
Let's talk specifically about it. Okay. So Bradley Cooper, very notably, did not perform as Jackson Maine. He performed as Bradley Cooper, the adult man living in America in 2019.
Big mistake. Huge.
Okay, so I didn't think it was as big a mistake as you did, though. There is something kind of reedy and Rick Astley-ish about his voice.
Even I wasn't going to say that.
Well, it's just there's some...
Live singing's hard, as literally every single singer tonight showed us.
It's no disrespect to the actual performance. I thought they did okay. I thought Lady Gaga missed some notes, and then she crushed some other notes.
Yeah.
She's been at this a long time. It's more just that the Jackson Maine of it all was so indelible, and that voice that he created is such a huge part of that performance. So to go without, I thought was just kind of confusing.
I think it's a total mistake, and it was part of my issue with the Vegas performance. And I think I said during this performance is that that's what I was afraid that A Star Is Born was going to be like, when we hadn't seen the movie and we were prepared for it to be some sort of beautiful disaster, because I thought it was going to be too super self-involved movie / pop stars kind of being like, isn't this great that we're here together singing this? And in the movie, they managed to create whole other characters. They acted, they made a movie, and it was phenomenal. But it does not work as well in their real life personas. It just feels awkward. You can sense the trying. The stares become far more awkward. The eye contact was very intense during this performance.
I mean, Lady Gaga is famed for her ability to have an unbroken stare at another person. She's done it many times with Tony Bennett, so it's not as if why should Bradley Cooper be any different? But there was just something, it was almost like a Tim and Eric sketch or something, like in the way that it was so self-serious and so severe, and also kind of a joke, like not a joke, but I was like, oh my God, the tension makes me want to rip the skin from my face. What's happening between these two people? And also the camera angles.
A choice.
They made a real choice. The camera was quite close on both of their faces.
By the end, especially when they sat down on the bench together.
Yeah. What did you think about the decision to peer that closely?
I was horrified in the moment.
Okay.
That was
Great.
I was so uncomfortable. And that was, I think, when I was covering my eyes and you were also covering your eyes. And I found it extremely awkward and over the top, and it took away from the performance itself. And then something very funny happened, which is a friend of ours, Gilbert Cruz, just posted a GIF of the final moment after they're singing and they look at each other and smile in the very close camera angle. And when it's not live and when there's not the weird sound, it just looks like a still from a movie. It instantly becomes like magical movie. Just go watch the GIF and you're like, wow, they recreated Star is Born. But there was something about the energy.
If you took an open mason jar and you just swung it between their faces during that moment and you closed the jar immediately, inside that jar is the cure to cold fusion. That's how we solve our energy crisis in this country. And it was strange. It wasn't bad. I didn't think it was bad. I thought that Jennifer Hudson was not great.
No.
I thought that Bette Midler was okay.
I liked her dress. And she sang well. I don't care for the song, and none of those performances should have been at the Oscars, and we all know my feelings on this. It's not a show about pop stars singing.
What about Kendrick Lamar's decision to not appear?
Well, it seems like the right decision
It did seem
now.
like the
Would
right
he
decision.
want to be in that group of people with those weird performances? And a lot of people thought that was a referendum on just the mess that was the telecast and the producers not knowing what they're doing. And we should talk more about the producers in a moment. But to me, that was a referendum on, like, the Oscars aren't a big enough deal for Kendrick Lamar to make time to show up.
He treated it like the Grammys, and that's funny because, for years, the Oscars were not the Grammys. The Oscars were way more important. The Grammys were a joke relative to the Oscars. And I wonder if that's indicative of something generationally also, that is sort of like, you didn't really acknowledge Black Panther in the way that you should have at this award show. You're not really acknowledging the movies that you should. You gave Best Picture to Green Book. Why would I show up to your award show? You guys are still recognizing movies like that.
Right. And also just the performances that you are putting on the telecast are inert and embarrassing for the most part. Not embarrassing, but they're just uncomfortable.
I want to say,
to a person.
As a father of Allie and Jackson, I'm proud of them.
Okay.
I'm proud of everything they've done.
Well, so, no, I'm proud of Allie and Jackson, and I wish that Allie and Jackson had shown up tonight.
Okay.
And I will say that was as a person who loves celebrity and movie stars and is just fascinated with how public images and myths are made, that was a fascinating 3 minutes on television. I mean, what a document that we all have and can study for the rest of our lives. And I'm sure we will. I mean, the memes were just
running hot.
Yeah.
Running also hot was the telecast, as you said, for the first hour of this show, and then something went off the rails. So let's talk just specifically about how this show went. There was no host. There was an opening number by Queen and Adam Lambert, and then there was a sort of bit, there was sort of a post-meta bit by Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Maya Rudolph, in which they identified the jokes that they would essentially be not telling since they were not the hosts. I thought that was pretty funny.
It was great. We were chuckling.
Yeah.
The part when Maya Rudolph did the shallow, fantastic.
Yes.
Great stuff.
Many people know, of course, Maya Rudolph is Minnie Riperton's daughter. Yes. She can sing her ass off. Imagine A Star is Born with Maya Rudolph. How would that play?
I would love it. I mean, it would have to then be a comedy. She could make a satire of A Star is Born.
Maybe that's something we should write.
Or maybe Maya could take a dramatic turn. And maybe maybe A Star is Born would finally win a damn Oscar because they love it when comedians take on dramatic roles. Anyway.
I thought that went well. And I thought the bit with Melissa McCarthy and Brian Tyree Henry dressed up for Best Costume was very funny and wonderful. And shout out to both of them for being so game. Melissa McCarthy, despite the fact that she was nominated for Best Actress for playing a sort of very dour figure in Lee Israel, is still like the funniest comic actress around, and you could just see that she was just in command in a way that a lot of people getting on that stage were not in command.
And also Brian Tyree Henry right next to her at being just as funny.
Super game too. I mean, that was a choice to dress in that fashion, and he looked great. So it seemed like the show was going really well, and we had enough funny people that we didn't need a host.
Yeah.
The sort of interregnum stuff worked efficiently. I thought the awards that they were giving out were good. You know, Hannah Beachler and Ruth Carter won for Black Panther. That was really cool. Then things started to kind of shift. Did you ever feel like we needed a host to come in and give the show some vivacity an hour or an hour and a half in?
I didn't.
Okay.
I thought, and I think Bill Simmons talks about this a fair amount of, like, a good thing to do is just to have famous people come in and do, like, very short concentrated bits. If you think about awards shows past, there's always one pair of presenters that are very funny and they do a little repartee, and everyone always thinks, oh, they should host next year. And they actually shouldn't host next year. They should just get to present and do another bit. And you have a lot of starry people doing bits. That, to me, works well. At some point, you tune into the Oscars to have people win awards, but also to see famous people. So, you know, more is more in that particular case.
I thought some of that was effective and some of it wasn't. I felt myself missing the kind of Will Ferrell, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson figures who kind of can reliably come on and just be entertaining. You know, Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig for years would do a bit together, and for them not to be there was unfortunate. What did you make of the decision to have non-filmmakers present the Best Picture nominees throughout the telecast? So we had Serena Williams for A Star Is Born.
Well, that was personally very exciting for me.
We had John Lewis presenting for Green Book.
Right.
Who else was presenting there?
Well, I believe that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey presented for Bohemian Rhapsody, and they did the whole, again, that more Queen.
Yes. Tom Morello for Vice. That was kind of a curious one.
Yeah. I feel like I've never really understood why they need to present the Best Picture nominees at great length throughout the movie. I mean, I do get it. It's because people haven't seen the movie.
Exactly.
I totally do understand that. And I understand that you're building a sense of momentum throughout the show in order to make the last award actually mean something. So, I mean, I understand. That's never the part of the show that is for me. Mm-hmm. So, in that sense, when you have Serena Williams, who I adore, presenting one of my favorite movies of the year, great. Why not? They always seem a little random, but I'm not mad at it.
Do you think that there should be no more hosts ever for anything?
You mean like this podcast? Like what
sure.
just walked off
Why
right
not?
now?
I noticed that the Ringer's Twitter account shared that with us.
Thanks, guys, for that.
Shots to us, I suppose. Love you guys.
Yeah. For awards shows, why don't we just keep it to awards shows?
Yes, no more award show hosts. Like game shows still need hosts.
Yeah. I think that could be a decent idea.
Okay. Who do you think that we'll get it soon? Do you think people will be like, they're really onto something here by fucking up the Kevin Hart situation?
No, I mean, I'm sure that they'll try to get a host next year because I'm sure that there's going to be a ratings issue, and then people will think that the only way to fix the ratings is to have like the most famous person in the world, and it'll probably be The Rock hosting next year, right?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Do you think the ratings will be significantly down?
I mean, I have thought that the ratings would be down from the beginning, which has nothing to do with the caliber of the show or even who won, but just because people don't watch live television anymore and people can just check in. And that's how it works. Netflix exists. But I think that the response to that will possibly not be as rational as we might like. I
fought pretty hard when they announced that 4 of the categories would not be on the telecast. Mm-hmm. I was kind of a baby about it in a way that I think a lot of people who are Oscar followers and Oscar chroniclers tend to be babies about this kind of thing. But it did dawn on me that a lot of the acceptance speeches in the crafts categories were pretty bad. And they were not entertaining and they were bad television, and they kind of slowed the show down. And it made me wonder, were the producers kind of right about that? And would that be such a grave injustice? Now, I think it would be unfortunate if someone couldn't get recognized for their incredible work. You know, if they decided to remove production design instead of, say, hair and makeup, you wouldn't have had Hannah Beachler's speech, which was awesome.
One of the best of the night.
So that's complicated. But, you know, the best hair and makeup styling, that was not a strong set of speeches.
Kind of like a performance art. But I think that the producers were right at a lot of things. For example, the songs, they weren't originally going to have all of them. And obviously that's a personal preference, but the song performances dragged and they slowed the show down. I still think sometimes we're going to get good speeches and sometimes we're going to get bad speeches. And the nature of the Oscars is to hand out awards. Mm-hmm. And there's no real fair way to shunt people to the commercial breaks unless possibly you respectfully give the shorts their own awards show that isn't the Oscars, which is still my suggestion. But so I don't know that they were wrong. Well, I think that they were wrong. I don't know that you were wrong in being mad about the categories. Just like, I don't think that cutting 4 or 3 awards from the telecast is going to ensure that you get 21 perfect speeches anyway.
I think it's circumstantial too. Like if Tim Blake Nelson sang the Buster Scruggs song and Emily Blunt sang the Mary Poppins song, I might have felt differently about those performances. Now, the Jennifer Hudson song can go away forever. I don't really care about that. But to have famous actors performing songs that they sang live, now I understand why they may feel a little tense about doing that in front of all of those people and 30 million people on television, a la Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga having some awkwardness on stage. It's understandable, but I do think it would have given it a little bit of immediacy, dynamism. It would have been more interesting than to just see, David Rawlings, who's a wonderful musician and songwriter, singing a country tune wearing a spangled cowboy suit. It was just kind of like, what is this for? And the comments that the producers had in the Times a couple of weeks ago about the idea of just going, presenter award, and that being the show being boring, that's not boring. Those were the best parts of the show.
Yeah, it moved pretty well, and as long as you have a recognizable person introducing the next category and you let them do 30 seconds, I thought that went really well. The low points were when they tried to produce it out. See the clip that was played of the new Academy Museum being built that is not completed, and so it was just a construction time lapse.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why the Academy wants to tout that. It's probably the single biggest new venture they've had in over 20 years. It's a huge endeavor. They're spending a lot of money on it. But, Jim and Jane America, just don't care about that. They don't care about the Academy's museum. And also to use Laura Dern in that way, who's a great actress, and then to just be a stooge for the Academy Museum is right in the middle of the telecast. That was really dull.
And also, even if the point is to get regular people in America to teach them about it and be like, this, you can come visit this. I mean, wait till it's finished. It's not done. Okay, I'm done.
In fairness to the Academy, otherwise there were only 2 montages. There was one at the very beginning, which I thought was quite a curious compendium of 2018 movies that included all sorts of non-Academy relevant movies like Tag.
Right.
And then there was one at the end, which was In Memoriam. And the In Memoriam was fine. They forgot a couple of people, as they always do. But they didn't do that thing where they were like, here are 100 historical movies about bank robberies.
Right.
The Academy loves to rob banks.
Right. And they didn't do the thing where a bunch of people who were nominated just talk about, what they saw on a screen when they were a child.
Yes, that's right.
Which, sometimes I like those.
When Errol Morris does those, I like them. But when some guy who works for the Academy does them, it's not as good.
Right.
So I thought that the show was relatively seamless, though I will say by the time we got to hour 3, I turned to my wife and I was like, can you remind me what we liked about this? And she said, I feel like you liked something.
Yeah.
But couldn't think of what it was.
That's true.
And I worry that that's essentially the legacy of this show, is that it was like, this was fine. And we just spent all these goddamn months doing this podcast, and it was fine.
Well, it was fine. It's better than it was a disaster.
That's true.
And I think I will also say, after Eileen was like, hey, I think you liked something, maybe, there was the Olivia Colman speech, which was a real moment.
Good point.
And then Green Book won, which was a real different type of moment.
It was.
If I may.
It was a moment.
So these things always lag in a little. I think it went pretty well. I think also the expectations were just so low that it really did clear the bar. It just kind of worked. It was a show. And I think the takeaways will be more about the awards and how we feel about the actual winners than whether or not there were enough montages.
It's interesting. I think seen from one angle, you can say, wow, Mahershala Ali, Regina King, Olivia Colman, Black Panther, First Man got a win. There were a lot of things that happened that I think film lovers or people who are interested in a kind of progression inside of the Academy can point to and say, that was really great. And then you have this kind of like just a shit sandwich with Green Book.
Yeah.
It's like there's very few people publicly are going to be like, hell yeah, Green Book won. Show me that person, and it'll probably be the first time I meet them.
You won't see that person because they are just in a big office somewhere in Hollywood, and they're very successful, and they're defending their success and their version of the industry. Which I agree. I agree with you. There are a lot of individual things that happen tonight that are very exciting, and then a lot of things that feel familiar or old-fashioned or kind of a bummer, and maybe not even kind of, just a plain bummer. And that has certainly been the story of this award season and of Hollywood in general, of things are changing and not as fast as we would like. And some people are very mad about that. And it's, kind of true of the world at large. And I don't know. I mean, it is. It's the final award was a bummer, but there were some good things.
We're going to be talking a lot more in the future on this show about what's happening in Hollywood and why things are changing and whether Netflix is going to have to buck up and try to get a 2020 award. But for now, this concludes the live version of our conversation. Amanda, thank you very much.
Sean, thank you.
And thanks for watching.